Medieval France, a cold autumn of 1297, north of Paris, the Montfaucon district. Even its name sinks into the bones. The stench of sewage rising from the muddy streets blends with the rotting vegetables and fish left in the marketplace. A sharp taste of rust and burnt wood hangs in the air. The hot breath of the forges leaves a red mist in the night. The blows of hammers echo like the anguished screams of iron on anvils. In this district, people are born, toil, and die in silence. No one cares. No one remembers. But one of them was different. Étienne de Morel. 20 years old, lean-framed yet with arms hardened like steel, a blacksmith's apprentice. Sweat forever on his brow, and in his eyes a depth of attention no one could quite decipher. Because Étienne didn't just hammer iron, he read people. The slightest twitch of a customer's brow, the tiniest tremor in a voice. He knew what they wanted, what they hid, before they ever opened their mouths. That gift earned him bread, but it also brought him solitude, because no one wants to meet the eyes of someone who can read their soul so easily. That day the air was heavy, the sky was leaden, the streets quieter than usual. At dusk, Étienne extinguished the forge bellows. His hands were still burning, but an inexplicable coldness gripped his insides, as though something was watching him, as though the darkness was whispering his name. On his way home, he passed beneath a narrow stone arch. He heard nothing but the echo of his own footsteps, until that ice-cold hand touched his shoulder. He turned. 3 shadows, black cloaks, faces covered with cloth masks. The moonlight sharpened even the cold glint in their eyes. Étienne de Morel. There was neither anger nor haste in the voice, only absolute certainty. "We've been looking for you." Étienne tried to step back, but 2 pairs of hands clamped his arms like vices. His breath quickened, his heart pounded in his ears. "What do you want from me? I have no money, only debts." The man in front, Armand Lenoir, stepped forward. Beneath his cloak, his hands were covered in old scars. "We have no business with money, boy. We have business with you, with your mind, with your eyes, with the fact that you look ordinary, yet you are dangerous in ways no one would ever suspect." Étienne's mouth went dry. "I'm just an apprentice." "That is exactly why." Then everything happened very fast. A black sack was pulled over his head. The smell, damp, mold, old blood. He was dragged at a run. Even when his feet left the ground, he no longer struggled. He had already understood that struggling was pointless. When he opened his eyes, he was in the crypt of an ancient chapel. Mold stains on the walls, a broken crucifix on the ceiling. In the center, a wooden table. On it, himself, wrists and ankles bound. 4 candles around him, and 4 shadows. Armand began to speak. His voice grew larger as it echoed off the stone walls, seeping into Étienne's bones. "King Louis d'Aubricourt of France. He must die, and you will do it." Étienne's breath caught. It felt as if a sledgehammer had struck his chest. "Me? Why me? Hire a soldier, a mercenary. I couldn't possibly." Armand raised a finger, silenced him. "That is precisely why. Because you are ordinary. Because no one will ever notice you. Because a blacksmith's apprentice can vanish inside the palace. But an assassin is never forgotten." From the back, the only woman in the group, dressed as a nun, Sœur Elise, stepped forward. Her voice was soft as silk, yet laced with poison. "And one more thing, Étienne. If you refuse the task, your mother, your father, and that sweet little Margot, their throats will be cut before the sun rises. We promise." In that moment, the world stopped. All Étienne could hear was the beating of his own heart. Thump, thump, thump. Margot's laughter flashed through his mind, his mother's trembling voice as she prayed each morning, his father's proud gaze the day he gave him his first hammer. He swallowed. His throat felt full of sand. I can't do this. God will never forgive me. My soul will go to hell. Armand leaned over the table. In the candlelight, his face became clear. Deep lines, pain hidden within every wrinkle. Your soul is already in hell, boy. You simply haven't realized it yet. Sometimes, the very thing a man fears most is the thing that saves him. Silence. The candles flickered. Étienne's eyes filled with tears. But they did not fall. He no longer even had the strength to cry. Finally, a whisper escaped his lips. Fine. All right. I'll do it. Those 3 words cut deeper into his heart than any blade. There was no turning back now. Armand inclined his head slightly. The other shadows bowed in perfect unison. And in the darkness of the crypt, 4 masked mouths spoke as one. Kings die. Shadows remain. Étienne's eyes closed. The darkness swallowed him whole. And that night, the blacksmith's apprentice died. In his place, someone else was born. The days gnawed at Étienne like a dagger turning inside him. Every morning he woke from the same nightmare. Blood on his hands, a crowned shadow before his eyes. L'ombre couronnée never left him alone. In a dark warehouse, an old monastery crypt, the cellar of an abandoned house. They trained him for hours. He learned to walk on the balls of his feet, to blend into shadow, to distract, to pick locks. But every night he wrestled with the same question. Can I truly bring myself to kill a king? No answer came, because Étienne was still the old Étienne, until the palace gates opened wide. A forged letter of reference, a little bribe, a little luck. Étienne was now the lowest servant in the palace kitchens, nameless and unnoticed. He rose at 4 in the morning and slept only after midnight. Burned scars on his hands, the weight of cauldrons on his back, but his eyes were always watching. He memorized every corridor, every door, every shadow, because he knew, one day, one of those shadows would lead him to the king. One morning, while dragging the cauldrons, she appeared at the end of the corridor, Queen Isabeau de Montclair, silks, rubies at her throat, a delicate crown on her head. Her beauty could blind a man, but what blinded Étienne was not her beauty. It was that look the queen stopped. She did not blink. Time froze. For those few seconds, it was as if only the 2 of them existed in the world. Étienne's heart pounded as if it would leap from his chest. In that gaze was recognition, pain, and something else that made the hairs on his neck stand on end. Guilt. The queen said not a word. She merely inclined her head slightly and walked on. But those few seconds were branded into Étienne's soul. At noon, while fetching water, he noticed the archive door ajar. The room smelled of dust, hundreds of years of parchment, thin and brittle as a mummy's skin. Étienne's fingers found a ledger on their own. He turned the pages, and there, in faded ink, a single line. 1277. Queen Isabeau de Montclair gave birth to a male child. The child was stillborn. 1277. The year Étienne was born. The ledger slipped from his hand. It echoed on the stone floor. A buzzing began in his head. This can't be coincidence, he told himself. It has to be. But his heart was telling him something else. The door slammed shut behind him. Armand was there, his face in shadow, his voice sharp as a blade. How very curious you are, Étienne. They say curiosity killed the cat, but tonight you will be the one doing the killing. He held an hourglass. Tonight the king's wine will be served. You will be among those servants, and your knife will be ready." That evening, the palace dining hall was bathed in gold and candlelight, Flemish tapestries on the walls, crystal on the table, the scent of roast goose and spices in the air. Étienne's tray was empty. His knife lay inside his cloak, over his heart. His knees trembled as he approached the table. King Louis d'Aubricourt sat at the head, old yet still imposing. The crown heavy on his head, his eyes weary, Étienne took one more step, and the king looked up. Their eyes met. The king's face turned deathly pale in an instant. The goblet in his hand struck the table. Wine spread like a red river. His lips trembled. A whisper escaped. You cannot be." Étienne froze. Does he know me? The thought burned his mind. The king tried to rise. It is impossible. The queen, The sentence was never finished, because Étienne's hand was no longer his own. Fear, rage, threats, years of buried pain, everything exploded at once. The knife flashed and buried itself in the king's chest. A scream tore through the hall, then another. The room dissolved into chaos. The crash of goblets, the topple of chairs, the shrieks of women. In Étienne's ears there was only one sound, the king's final breath. "You are her son, Isabeau's." Then the king collapsed. The crown rolled from his head and spun across the stone floor. Étienne's eyes widened. The world crashed down upon him. Her son? I am the queen's son? His legs would not move, but he knew he had to run. He plunged into the corridors. He raced down stairways. In the light of the lanterns, his shadow danced madly on the walls. Bells were ringing behind him. The shouts of the guards were closing in, but Étienne no longer heard them. That night, a king died. But that night, everything Étienne thought he knew about himself also died, and the darkness swallowed him once more. This time, there was no way back. The rain fell so violently, it was as though the sky had grown furious and wanted to drown the world. Étienne, the king's blood still drying on his hands, had taken refuge in a muddy, ruined hut. There was no door, only a broken frame. The wind rushed in, plastering his soaked clothes to his skin. His knees shook, his breath came in ragged gasps, but what trembled most was his mind. You are her son, Isabeau's. Those 3 words hammered inside his skull, blow after blow. With every strike, he shattered a little more. His mother? The queen? Or simply the dying king's final lie? Étienne pressed his palms to his face, nails digging into his skin. The smell of blood filled his nostrils, his own, or the king's. He could no longer tell. A shadow appeared in the doorway. A scrap of paper flew in with the wind and stuck to the ground at his feet. Red wax seal, still warm. A crown dagger emblazoned upon it. With trembling hands, he opened it. Come to the stone altar deep in the Bois de Roche forest. Claim your reward. Do not delay. No signature, only that familiar seal, l'ombre couronnée. It reeked of a trap. Yet something inside Étienne had awakened, stronger than fear, a hunger for truth. Heedless of the rain, he set out. The forest was midnight itself. The trees so dense that moonlight barely seeped through pine needles crunched beneath his feet. Wet branches whipped his face. The stone altar stood in the center like a centuries-old oath. A single candle burned upon it, and at the candle's head, the queen. She had thrown back her cloak. Her hair was wet and disheveled. No crown rested on her brow. For the first time, she looked almost human, but her eyes were still as cold as a serpent's. Étienne's throat tightened. Is this a trap? The queen tilted her head and gave a faint smile. Traps are only for those who do not know the snare. She took a step forward. You found me, Étienne. Well done. Étienne drew his knife, but his hand shook. Why me? His voice cracked. Why turn a blacksmith's apprentice into a king killer? The queen drew closer. The heel of her shoe clicked on the stone. Because you are not ordinary. Because you are my creation. Étienne felt his heart stop for a moment. What do you mean? The queen gazed into the candle flame. Louis was weak. He could no longer bear the throne. The country was rotting, enemies multiplying. Someone had to cleanse him, and that cleansing had to come from a hand no one would ever suspect. She fixed her eyes on Étienne. Your hand. Étienne stepped back. Then why choose me? There are hundreds of killers. Why me? The queen fell silent. Then, very slowly, in a voice colder than ice, she said, because my blood runs in your veins. Étienne's world collapsed once again. His knees buckled. He clutched the stone altar. You're lying. But his voice begged, pleaded to believe. The queen shook her head. No, you are my son. When you were born, Louis rejected you. A blacksmith's wife took you, raised you, and I forgot you, until the day I needed you. Tears filled Étienne's eyes. Rage, pain, betrayal. Everything overflowed at once. So you sought me out on purpose. You dragged me into this darkness on purpose. You used your own son as a weapon. Not a single muscle moved on the queen's face. Yes, and I am still using you. She took another step. More blood must flow to save France. My enemies still live. They will die by your hands. Étienne raised his head. There were no more tears in his eyes, only an ice-cold fury. You made me a pawn, your own son. The queen smiled. No, Étienne. I made you a king, king of the shadows. Étienne gripped his knife until his knuckles went white. No longer. His voice cut sharper than a whisper. I am no one's toy anymore. The queen's smile froze. Too late, my son. The shadows have already swallowed you. Étienne lifted his head. As the rain streamed down his face, for the first time he smiled. A dark, cold smile. No, mother. Tonight the shadows will obey me. And in that moment a wind rose from the depths of the forest. As though the darkness itself had been waiting for his command, Étienne de Morel was no longer prey. He was the hunter, and the hunt had already begun. The rift was growing. Red and black veins tore through the air. Shadows writhed on the walls. The candle flames stretched like knives, then shrank again in an instant. The whispers were no longer pleading. They were commanding. Submit. Kneel. There is no escape from us. Gabriel lay gasping on the floor, palms pressed against the stone. The tears streaming from his eyes were no longer born of fear. They were pure, blazing rage. Something that had lain dormant for years in the darkest corners of his mind had awakened. But this time, he would not listen. Giles stood before the rift with arms spread wide, like a priest offering sacrifice. His face was no longer human, pallid, eyes sunken, lips drawn back, teeth bared like an animal's. They are your essence, Gabriel, he said, his voice thick and layered, as though many mouths spoke at once. You cannot deny them. Gabriel rose slowly to his feet. His legs trembled, but his gaze was steady. No, he said. His voice began shaky, then hardened into stone. My essence is whatever I choose it to be. He took a step. The red light of the rift licked at his feet. A second step. The whispers went mad. Enough. That single word shook the room. The rift faltered for a heartbeat. The candle flames froze. For the first time, real fear flashed across Giles's face. I reject you, Gabriel said, whatever your names are. I am not listening. And he slammed his foot down with all his weight into the very heart of the symbol, onto the rift itself. The stone cracked, the red light exploded, A blinding white flash swallowed everything. Then, silence. As the dust slowly settled, Gabriel opened his eyes. Giles lay on the floor, eyes wide open, yet empty. A hollow shell. One by one, the people in the right staggered to their feet, looking around in confusion, like children waking from a long sleep, unable to remember their dreams. Gabriel walked toward the door. His legs still shook, but each step landed firmer than the last. The next morning, the town lay swallowed in fog. The street lamps still glowed. The air was damp and cold. When Gabriel stepped out of the building, the sun was just beginning to redden the horizon. His armpits were soaked with sweat, his hair plastered to his forehead, but a strange calm filled his eyes. He whispered to himself, "It's over, or at least, for now." He glanced back. The building's windows were pitch black. For a moment, in the topmost window, a shadow seemed to stir. Gabriel shook his head. Just his imagination, he told himself. Days later, when they found Giles, he was still in the same room, standing, staring into nothing. He could not speak. He recognized no one. The doctors called it complete mental collapse. Gabriel knew the truth. When the rift closed, Giles's soul had gone with it. Gabriel climbed the hill outside town. The wind billowed his jacket. The sun had fully risen now. The town slowly vanished into the mist below. He drew a deep breath. "The darkness called me," he said, "but I chose my own path." He fell silent for a moment, because within the wind, almost too faint to hear, there was a whisper. "Remember?" Gabriel closed his eyes. His lips trembled. Then he smiled. A small, resolute, bitter smile. "I didn't even hear it." And he turned his back and walked away. Down the hill, far from the town. His footprints lingered in the dust for a moment. Then the wind erased them too. Every darkness calls. But not everyone answers. Some find their freedom in their own silence. And that morning, Gabriel felt truly free for the first time.